So Colin, welcome. Thank you for being with us today. It's so good to see you.
Yeah, it's great to be here. I'm excited to have the conversation with everyone.
So we're going to talk really about, oh, I love even saying it, the conversion story formula, which
Mm.
is so juicy. But before we even get into that, I feel like we should just kind of set the context a little bit of like how you got into this work and why you love demystifying it. Like people have all these preconceived notions about business and sales. And I think that you and I come from a place of like really wanting to create authentic connection.
Mm,
And so the
yeah.
fact that you love to teach this, I'm curious how you got into it. And then just to set the stage, why you approach it the way you do and love helping people reframe business so that it feels like an extension of their just
Mm.
having a really big heart.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, when people get into business, there's a sudden realization that that you have to learn how to sell essentially to grow your business, to serve your clients. And one of the challenges is that, and we have this hugely in our community, very people who are really heart centric. They've had all these kind of negative experiences or maybe negative connotations around what selling actually means. And then because of that, they think they have to just be like highly pushy or aggressive in their selling,
Right.
and they just feel like a dissonance around doing that. And so for me, in the exploration of what it means to communicate in a way where, and you do this so beautifully, Cathy, where you communicate from an authentic level, but it just naturally attracts the right type of people to you, and they want to join your programs. They want to invest in themselves and go to the next level in their journey. And so rather than feeling like you're trying to push someone to do something they don't really want to do, you're actually magnetically drawing people into your world. And when they're the right fit, they're like, heck yes, I want to move forward. And so that's the premise of why I love storytelling. Because for me as well, storytelling goes past the conscious mind and into the unconscious.
Mm.
Like when you sit down with your daughter or your son or your kids, and you say, once upon a time there was a little princess and she went out on a journey, and they just they just sit back and they just listen. And the same happens for us as adults. As soon as we start telling a story, we go into that calm unconscious state. And from what we know about influence, that's the place. If anyone's a great therapist, a great psychologist, a great communicator, that's the place that you can really influence people.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I just love everything you're saying. First of all, when you said that people don't like the idea that sales is pushing people into
Mm,
things, of course, like what normal person would
mm,
like that, right? It doesn't make any sense. And I do love what you said about how and it was a really generous thing to reflect to me, but just in general, the idea that when we speak from an authentic place, it attracts a certain type of person. Like that's number one. Like just the person before you even get to what's the conversation, who you're attracting to
mm,
the conversation is number one. And it is really beautiful. And people tend to say this. And I think that you guys sitting here have felt this way, that you look around the room in the rooms that we create and the rooms I
mm,
facilitate, it's really just so easy to love everybody
mm,
because it's a certain kind of person that comes forward and then naturally they really enjoy each other, right? But before you even begin, it's thinking about when you're sending out the fishing line, what fish are coming toward you has to do with what you're sending out and how authentic you're willing to be and how vulnerable and how however your energy is coming out already sets the stage. So I thought that was really cool that you said that. And then I love what you just said about storytelling, because it's not like I know that, strategically. It's not like somebody told
mm.
me, okay, I want you to become a good storyteller and eventually this will be the key to your whole life.
Yeah.
But I do get told you're a really good storyteller. And
Mm,
I mean, it's only like right now sitting here that I'm putting it together with like revenue, like I know it works in terms of connecting to people probably, but it's not something I'm really actually calculating. But it's really powerful to hear you say that it evokes the subconscious and puts us into a place where we feel we're engaging and there's a safety that gets created. And I think for all of you sitting here, that's a really cool thing
Mm.
for us all
Yeah,
to
and
sit back in here.
I think when you tell stories right, they hear your story, but they feel theirs. And that's the power of really good storytelling. I think when you were on my podcast recently, we talked about how you'd shared so many metaphors and so many stories in the conversation. And I think for some people it does come more natural, like they think in pictures, they think in stories and
Right.
metaphor. But some people not so much. That doesn't matter, because it's actually a technique. It's actually a methodology that you can learn. You can learn to become a lot better communicator than you are right now. And the exciting thing is that when you do that, you're going to make more money. You're going to make more revenue in your business. You're going to attract more of the right people. And so, great storytelling. They hear your story. They feel theirs. It moves past the conscious mind, which, by the way, that's where all the resistance is. If you look at any of the work of like the early psychotherapists, psychologists, a lot of it was learning to get past the conscious mind, because that's where all our resistances are. And then you get into the unconscious with storytelling and metaphor, and then that's when you can really see transformation in people's lives. I know even for me, when I see a great speaker, it's the stories they tell that move me, that emote the emotion, that create the motivation. I just finished my book like this week. I just finished writing my book. And one of the things I was obsessed about was putting in enough stories. And it's funny, when I read through the different sections, I go from like technical expertise, like training stuff, and then straight into the next story. Like, I'm sitting at my brown wooden desk with 2.5 legs and just straight into the story. And I can tell that story soon. But it's like, yeah, that people just love hearing stories. Now, I will say this. Adults don't like being told that they're going to be told a story. So so don't say, I want to tell you a story. I know I just did that then before, but this is the context of today. But don't normally go, I want to tell you a story, because every adult's going to go, oh, great, I'm not going to get this 3 minutes of my life back again. You just tell the story. And when you just tell the story, it really resonates and connects with them right away.
I'm just thinking about how so many of the things that I repeat are the stories that were told to me by my grandparents, like those stories that were passed down. They're so special, and it's because of the emotion that I felt, and how my mind, and it's probably why we often like reading a book rather than watching a movie often, because when we're reading the story, our own mind puts us in it.
Yes.
It puts us in the story, and it's beautiful how you just laid that out. So when it comes to making it feel fluid, right? It comes to making it not feel sort of stiff, but you want it to feel like it's in the moment, it's really happening organically. You have a whole formula for how you help people first understand what is their story to tell, which one of the stories, because we all, let's face it, I mean, especially women, like we sit down at a table. My husband says to me, he's like, didn't you talk to your sister yesterday and like 5 minutes ago? You have another story to tell? I'm like, yeah, there's a million things that have happened to me in one day. How do we know what is our conversion story? How do we know what's the story out of our life or out of whatever the realm is, given what the business is? How do we find the
Mm.
story, first of all?
Yeah, this was a revelation I had about 2.5 years ago. And I realized that there was this idea of an origin story or a signature story. And a lot of the time, that origin story it's kind of like a elongated story about why you got into doing what you're doing, why you're passionate about it, some of the challenges that you've had, and the results you've got. And that's okay. But the problem with it is it's kind of a little bit boring sometimes, and it's very much about you. It's just about, this is kind of why I got into it. This is why I'm passionate. And the focus energetically is very much on you. And I had this revelation that if we can tell the story about it's usually the first most transformative experience you had with the vehicle that you help people with. If we can tell that story in a way where we can impart the emotion and the feelings that you went through, what will happen is the audience will once again hear your story, they'll feel theirs, and they will feel like, oh my gosh, that's the journey I'm going on, and I'm about to have that transformation myself. And so the difference between like a regular origin story is an origin story is usually kind of laid out. It's linear, it's logical, it's kind of what you went through and how you got to where you are right now. And a lot of the time it's just like your general story. The conversion story is the story that best articulates the transformation that you help people with. And so for everyone listening to this, I want you to think about, when was the first time you experienced a deep breakthrough in the thing that you help people with? That's kind of like the first thought to come up with.
Wow, that's really powerful. I totally get that, by the way. I find you're right. It's very self-focused when you tell the story of like why you got into your work. And often it's a little boring. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not that interesting for everyone,
No.
but you're right. It's a different question to ask. But what was the most transformative piece for you that awoken what you now help people with? And that's usually a big story, right? Because you're talking about something transformational that happened when you went from feeling like you became who you are now because of something. Like that's way
Yes.
different than, so here's how I got into, like you don't
Yeah.
necessarily even think to tell that part of it. So
Mm.
give us an example. Give us an
Yeah,
example.
well, I'll share mine. I'll share mine.
Okay.
So I'm sitting at this old brown wooden desk. It's literally got 2.5 legs. It's being held up by phone books. And I've got my laptop in front of me, and I'm a coach. I had these big desires of running a coaching business. I was new to my coaching journey. I was excited about having a business that had meaning and could make money, give me freedom, all that sort of stuff. But the problem is that I I had no clients. I was struggling. I was stuck. I didn't know like what to do or where to go to actually move this forward. Now, when I think about it, I had actually had half a client. I don't know if you've ever had half a client, Cathy. They're one of those people where they turn up like every second session and pay you like every third, and then they kind of text you the day of and say, I can't. I had like one of those people, right? And so I'm not exactly flourishing in my coaching business. And I remember I got a phone call from a friend who was a part of a program that I was involved in. And he said, Colin, I've got a speaking event coming up. And he said, I can't do it, but I thought of you and I was wondering, would you like to do it? Now, at the time, I'm not a professional speaker, right? I hadn't spoken professionally. I'd spoken at college and at school. Like that's pretty much it.
Okay.
And it's unpaid. It's not a paid speaking event. And I said, yeah, that sounds great. Like I'd love to do it. I said yes, and I'll allow the how to work itself out. And so I remember heading into the evening, so nervous, overwhelmed, like thinking, are people going to like my content? Am I going to be good enough at this? Are people going to think that I'm not credible enough, that I'm not prepared enough? All the things going on in my head. I'm walking up the stairs with my wife on my arm, and really I'm on her arm, and it's this dark and stormy night. And I walk in, the event organizer sees me, he runs over, he's like, Colin, you wouldn't believe this. This is the biggest event we've ever had in our history. We've got 137 people in this room. They're so excited to hear from you. This is the worst news of the night for me, right? Because in my mind, I just think, great, I'm going to look stupid in front of their biggest audience. Now, he introduced me, I got up, I did a presentation, and at the end, I made an offer. And I didn't realize at the time, but the offer was a really irresistible one. And from the 137 people, 125 of them gave me their personal details to follow up. I followed up. I ended up landing or signing 12 full, not half, full coaching clients. So my income went from basically $100 a month to over 10,000 a month, like what felt like instantly, like very quickly within like a week or so. And then 4 days later, I get a call from Hewlett Packard. There was a director sitting in the back, because you never know who's in the room or who's listening to the podcast. And he called me. He said, "I loved your presentation. Could you come and speak at our next global training day?" And that ended up having 5,500 people. That was my first paid speaking event. And went on to speak all around the world. We've lived in the US, built businesses in the US the last 10 years, coached people like Amy Porterfield, Jenna Kutcher now. We've got over 10,000 clients. But for me, I realized that it all started and all built when I spoke. And my revelation was that literally in just one presentation, you can have an absolute breakthrough in your business and in your life. And that was the transformation that I went through.
That is such a good story. I love that story. I love that story. Oh my God. I'm like sitting here and like just feeling, I'm just like feeling all there is that came from that. It's really powerful. I mean, you said a bunch of things. Like you just said, yes, you figured out the how. You showed up. Worst news you can get, 137 people are there. You get up and then you made this irresistible offer. By the way, what was the irresistible offer?
It was just free coaching with me. Right. I was just offering some free coaching sessions.
Yeah.
And when I first started, I did about 100 free one-on-one coaching sessions before I started charging people. So I'd already done a lot of free coaching session up to that point, but then I just stacked on a bunch more. And then I was just like, boom, let's go. And then that was when I had the confidence to really do it. But yeah, there's a lot going on in that story, and we can unpack it in terms of some of the
Yeah.
technical elements
Go
of it.
ahead, please.
Yeah, so one of the first things that you must do is you have to start in a moment. So rather than saying, I was in college and it was really good and I was studying commerce and I had a great teacher. No, I'm sitting in the cafeteria with my best friend and I'm looking at her in the eyes and she's welling up. And I said the thing that I'd not been wanting to say for so long. Right? It's like you start in a moment, right? Not when you're at college, wherever you were. It's start in a moment. So that's one of the key things. Another thing is you have to go internal and external with your story. So what that means is you're going to tell the external elements of your story, like what was there. I talked about the color of my desk. I talked about what I was doing. I had my laptop in front of me. I got a phone call. There was visual, there was auditory, there's kinesthetic going on. But then I went internal. And when you go internal, how you felt, the dissonance, the challenge that you were experiencing or the desires, that's when your story becomes their story. Because as soon as you go into more generalized universal emotions, that's when the audience goes, that's how I feel as well. And maybe you're not going to capture everyone, but how many people here have had a desk with 2.5 or 3.5 legs? Probably not many, right? There's probably not many that have had that level of luxury in their life. But all of us have felt the desire to want to create something of meaning, to want to create freedom, to want to impact people's lives, and felt stuck with how to move forward, right? And so that universal emotion is the thing that people connect with. And so that's like some of the technical elements of it. And then right at the end, I was very clear on what my big idea was. Most people aren't clear on what their big idea is. It's what's called the core premise. The core premise is the first part usually of when we're working out our conversion story. So I said, I don't know if anyone can remember it, but I said, I realized that I was just one presentation away from seeing a breakthrough in my business. Now that's what I teach, right? I teach speaking, I teach building a presentation that sells. That's the core. Our whole multi-million-dollar business is built on that one sentence: is you are one presentation away from the breakthrough you want in your business. And so finding that sentence, that core idea, drives the story as well.
I mean, it's so good. I was just thinking, before I had my podcast, I was a songwriter for 10 years.
Mm.
And I wrote music for TV shows like Grey's Anatomy and Pretty Little Liars and whatever.
Mm.
And I was a songwriter because I was inspired, not because I broke it down. But eventually I started teaching a class in songwriting. And
Yeah.
it's exactly what you just said, is what I realized I started teaching was that you can't just tell a song that says college. Like you can't just tell a song that's like, yay, New York. Like it has to be
Yeah.
like, Sunday morning stroll, meet so and so.
Mm.
Get like you have to start in a moment.
Yes.
But the chorus of the song, in order for you to sing along, baby, you light up my world like nobody else. Like the emotion of the chorus has to be universal, right?
Wow.
And so
Wow.
you have to move into like that universal like feeling,
Mm.
because it becomes everyone's song in the chorus.
Mm.
And I just like, it's really interesting, right? Because like that's kind of what I realized as well. And then my songs would be used all the time, and they're like, why are your songs being used when so and so maybe is even a better songwriter? I'm like, because his whole chorus was about this girl named Mallory, and the TV show isn't about Mallory. It's about, Ross and Rachel or whoever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I wasn't writing songs then, you guys. I'm a little younger than that. But the point is,
Mm.
it's so interesting because it's exactly the same.
I've
It's
never had that revealed like that before. That
That's
it's
why
in
you came today, Colin. You're
that way.
welcome.
That's worth the ticket.
But yeah, it's like, we feel like Simon and Garfunkel are singing about us, but they start off and he's like, telling you the little details of being, on the bus. I think her name is Cathy.
Mm.
Cathy, I said, as we boarded the Great Train to Pittsburgh, whatever it is. So it's like you get specific and then you get broad, right?
That's so good. Yeah.
But it
Exactly.
exactly, guys. Guys,
Yeah.
pick up a guitar. Let's go. That I could teach you also. But anyways, okay. So what you just said is beautiful. And I think for all of us, we should go back and like really sit and allow those stories to come out.
Mm.
What are those
Mm.
specific moments? What are the internal feelings that are totally universal? And by the way, they're just so fun to tell. Like when you find those stories and you remember your stories, because you have a lot of them and you have those few that are
Mm.
so special, you'll enjoy. It's very cathartic and people love hearing your stories. Um, I think, Colin, I just want to ask you this. I think people sometimes compare their stories to other people's stories and think
Mm.
like my friend Amy Purdy lost her legs to meningitis and then became a snowboarder with prosthetics. So I
Right.
think people are like, why would I tell a story about speaking to 137 people when someone's story is so much more epic? Like it's not
Mm.
that interesting. I'm not Charles Dickens, right? So how do you help people understand that their story is still meaningful and valuable, even if, they didn't come back from Vietnam and meet Leia Salonga and Miss Saigon or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, how do we understand that our stories still have value?
This is such a good one because I remember a conference I was at. It was a large conference, and I was speaking at the conference, and there was a guy who was the main speaker, and they got him up, and he was an astronaut, and he got up and he shared his story about
It's
going to the
crazy.
moon and all that, which is really cool.
Yeah.
But it was also really boring. Like after about 15 minutes into it, like I could tell everyone, and I had multiple people come up to me and just say, "Gosh, that astronaut guy was boring, right?" And I'm like,
Funny.
I haven't been to the moon, and I definitely wasn't getting feedback like that about my presentation, and I was not telling stories about the moon. And so a lot of the time we think about these sensational stories, right?
Right.
But remember, the goal of the story is to make your story their story. So it's not about massive moments all the time. It's actually about transformative moments that you went through. Like for example, I remember
Yeah.
I was at daycare with my daughter, and I was standing there. She was playing with her friends, and she was yelling at me. She's got these two little blonde pigtails, so cute. Her name's Georgia. And as the good engaged dad, I am on my phone scrolling through Instagram, probably looking at what's Cathy doing, and and she's screaming. She's like, "Dad, Dad!" She's screaming across with her cute little American accent, and she's screaming at me. And she runs over, and I'm just like ignoring her, right? I'm, and she runs over, she taps on my leg, and I look down, I see a little blonde hair and a big blue eyes look up at me, and I like bend down, and she's got a hand like this, like she wants to whisper something into my ear. And I put my head down, and she cups her hand around my ear, and she goes, "Dad, could you hold my hand? I want to go across the playground to see my friends." And like in this moment, I realized I had the epic dad fail, and the proverbial dagger just goes into my heart. And I realized that, you know, I've missed this moment of seeing my daughter. And I realized that so often in life, we're trying to yell and make these massive stories, but it's not about that. It's just about whispering the right words. And when you do that, you move people to take action. Now I'll just press pause. That's like a story to explain your question, right? And now that moment, I mean, I could have just missed that moment. That's like it feels like a regular parenting moment, but I just made it into a story, an experience that I had. And what's usually good about stories is when you made a mistake or you missed it or you had some vulnerability. So that moment I missed it. I missed it as a dad. And then it tapped into the heart of the father, the heart of the mother, and it tapped into something else. And so yeah, they don't have to be going to the moon or losing your legs, and much as they can be great stories, they can actually be everyday stories. So who here knows they've got some everyday stories at least? Who here knows that? I trust you do, because you've probably got thousands of these stories, but you haven't categorized them. And so a cool little exercise I'd encourage you guys to do is get out the Notes app, and every time you have an experience, like write it in there. I remember getting back from a vacation one time and going to open the door, and the door didn't open. Have you ever experienced that? Like you're like, okay, the door's not opening, and I open the key, and the deadlock opens. Then I go to open the handle, and the handle doesn't open. And I realized that before I'd left, I go into this mode. My wife calls it security man. And security man puts on his cape and he locks everything up like it's never been locked up before, right? And you know, you lock the windows, you don't normally lock the windows. I'm doing all those sort of things. I'd lock the door handle, and for some reason, I never lock the door because we've got the deadlock, and I'd lock the door handle out. And so I, my wife's loving me at this moment because we'd just come back from a long haul flight. We're standing, it's a Saturday evening. She's loving me, giving me eyes of love. And so I call the locksmith. He comes, no word of a lie, within 2 minutes, he opens the door and walks in. Now, what was crazy was that that moment I was locked out of an area that I already own. That space is already my space. I own it, it's my property, but I couldn't get in. And so often in life, we come up with these stories, these reasons, these things that actually lock us out from the very space that is already our own. Now, I
So,
am just telling stories here, but I'm just trying to show
yeah,
you
yeah, yeah,
how
you get it.
this is an
It's
everyday
amazing.
moment. I locked myself out of the house and I called a locksmith. I could have missed that moment, but it becomes a powerful teaching moment.
No, it's totally true. It's totally true. I released a podcast yesterday and I told this story about, I mean, it was just organic in the conversation.
Mm.
Many of you
Yeah.
have heard me say this, that after 45 years this year, several months ago, I like finally like told my dad like things I like never had told him during my
Mm.
parents' divorce. And it really felt like I'm such a recovering people pleaser, especially in my family of origin. I felt like moving a mountain, that I could be honest.
Mm.
And it was so interesting because we got so many notes back from this podcast that they were weeping that I told this story. And I'm like, this isn't me talking. I mean, I've told stories where I'm like, you know, I mean, I've told much bigger stories in my life than finally like being honest with my father about just like regular things I had been holding on to my whole life. And then
Yeah.
how there was so much love in escrow for me that I didn't know until I did it. And people were really moved by that. And I think it's a good example of like, it doesn't have to be your biggest, like
Mm.
most impressive story. in terms of like what people think is shiny, but it's like people know what that feels like
Yeah.
to have a role you play with someone and set it down and choose to be authentic. And that can be the biggest leap you ever take, more than going to law school, more than having a child, like just being authentic with a person that you're afraid to be authentic with. And so I totally can get that we should appreciate then those, what we think are micro changes that we've made, how you could go back and circle those moments, because everybody has moments like that they're still yet to transform. And then what if they could go transform that moment? You know, I had Marianne Williamson. I became friendly with her before she became political, but whatever, I still really like her a lot as a human being. And at the end of one of the podcasts, she's been on a few times, I said, what's one thing someone can do right now with all of this? And I mean, she teaches about so many big concepts. And she said, think of one person who you're not on good terms with and just write to them and say, for whatever it's worth, if there's anything I did, even if it's 90% them, just say like, I just want to be clean and let you know, like, I'm sending you nothing but love. And she was like, that's the hardest thing for people to do. And if everyone did that with one person overnight, the world would be an amazing place. And it was just like, these little things that seem so little are so big. And those are
Yeah,
usually
that's so
the
big.
hardest things, right? You know, they say it's easier to lose 100 pounds than 8 pounds. It's like these littler changes are actually harder in some ways. And so the humanity in micro changes and nuances is really beautiful. I want to ask you about moving into where you actually then make the sale, because I think everything you're saying is so poetic and so beautiful and so it's so in line with people who have the value of being the most impactful version of themselves. But then all of a sudden it's like, but then I have to lead my way to the end of the presentation where I make a sale and now I want to like throw up or run off the stage, right? So how do you get then to that place and keep it feeling fluid and not like you just turn into Frankenstein all of a sudden when you go to make the offer? Help us connect the dots there.
Well, this is a real transformation that needs to happen in people's understanding of what selling actually is. Because when people make a transaction with you, the transaction itself starts that transformation. One of my good friends, James Wedmore, he has this great saying. He says, the transaction starts the transformation. And I think that's so true. I know for me, if I think about where do you get the greatest testimonials? I want to ask everyone listening to this on the podcast, on the call, where do you get the greatest testimonials? Is it from people who are on Instagram? Like, do they send you a DM and say, like, you've literally changed my life? Now, Cathy, you might get some of those. But or is it from your clients? Like, where do you get the best ones? Your clients who've actually committed. It's from your clients, right? It's not a trick question. It's from your clients. They're the ones who truly see that transformation. That's because when someone buys something from you, there is like a covenant that's created. There's a commitment that's created. There is a level of intentionality that goes to just a whole other level when someone pays money. And when you pay money, obviously you pay attention, but money is just a currency of someone's commitment. And so when they transact, essentially what they're saying, I am going to take my commitment to the outcome that I have already. Remember, it's even though as long as your program aligns with the outcome that they have, them paying money is them just saying, I'm going to take my commitment to the next level in myself. And I would love to partner with you in getting that result that we both want for the client at the same time. And so I don't think you need to feel bad about asking for money, first of all, because money is just a currency of commitment. It's just an energetic flow of commitment. There is time is a currency of commitment. There is energy itself, like actually just doing the thing is a currency of commitment. They're usually the three currencies of commitment. And so when you think about making an offer, think about the idea of an offer itself, because I don't really even like the word sell, because sell has kind of some negative connotations. But if I had my own choice, I would call it an offer purely, and because you're offering something. In other words, it's an invitation. So it's like I've created a space where you can see a transformation in yourself, and this is the goal of this space. Would you like to enter the space? If you would like to enter this space, there is some commitment levels that everyone must commit to make this space incredible, sacred, protected. Because if it's not protected, then just anyone can come in. And so the higher the price, the higher the time, the higher the commitment is usually the more sacred that space becomes. And so when you think about just first of all making an offer or selling, think about it as just all you're doing is inviting people, if they feel like this is the right next step for them, you're inviting them into a sacred place of transformation.
That was so beautiful. And, I've been doing this. I've been doing the podcast and interviewing people and coaching for 8 years. And the way you just said it was singular to you. You just said something in a way that I've not heard it. And I really love so many things about what you just said. I want to just highlight a few. First of all, the idea that it's the currency of commitment is beautiful. Beautiful. I also love the idea that that's what they've decided is the outcome they're wanting to choose, and they're partnering with you to get there. What I think most people think when they go to sell something is you're codependent now with me to do it on your behalf. And no one, right? My Jimmy Choos, my $1,200 high heels are not going to close the deal for me. Or, when I write the offer on the house, I'm not going to get it because the shoes are like going to write the letter with the picture of my girls that I always send when I buy a house. Cause I'm like, you want us packing for camp in your house. You want to give it to us. But me wearing those shoes, right, puts me in a frame of mind. And so I think it's something about that really keeps it neutral, and you really keep your eyes on what is the responsibility of the client, right? And what is
Yes.
your responsibility? What's your shared responsibility? And then I love what you just said about the sacredness of that. The greater the commitment, the more sacred the space, which is what people are going to pay to be in. Now, what if people turn to you and say, because I'm sure you hear this, well, no one has any money, or nobody can buy it, or there's not enough people at that higher level. So don't I need to charge basically next to nothing?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, it's always a reflection of how you're showing up in the world. Because as much as, you know, are there some people who don't have enough money right now? 100%. I mean, there's always going to be a lot of people who don't have enough money. And there's always going to be people who actually have a lot of money. And sure, there is some, generic energetic flows that happen in economies. I get that. But there's always going to be a percentage of people that have lots of money. There's always going to be a majority of people that have some money. And then there's always going to be a small percentage of people that have absolutely nothing. And so I just think that that's just normal. Part of it is actually is helping people to, if people have price resistance, it's either a legitimate, they just have literally no money at all. And they're in that, and they're probably in maybe an unresourceful state potentially. Uh, or you haven't been able to impart a vision and impart the value of what they could actually create. Because I know for me, if you increase the stakes, you increase the value, you'll just do whatever you can. Like for example, if I said that there's a $5 note in a burning house, you can go and grab it, you wouldn't care. But if I said your daughter's in a burning house, you would head in no matter what, right? Even as I say that, I like feel the emotion coming up in me. Because when you increase the stakes of what's at stake, when you increase the value of what they could create, then the motivation just goes through the roof. And I know for me, in entrepreneurship, when I say yes, when I fully say yes, the how works itself out. I remember for me, the first time I joined like a high level mastermind program, I got accepted into it, and then they sent how much it was. And I was like, whoa, this is more than I expected. And I remember having a conversation with my wife, who's amazing. And she said, babe, this is the right next step. Like, this is the thing we need to do. And so we did it, we committed to it. And my life, first of all, transformed. I entered that space. I remember the first time I entered just the Facebook group, and someone posted, I just did $200,000 this month. And I'm like, wait, what? Right? And I'd never seen a post like that. This was back in the OG days when people didn't share things like that. And it just blew my mind. And then I got to experience the people, got to experience their lives. I would say if I hadn't at the time, that was $25,000. This was 9 years ago, right? $25,000. This was 9 years ago. If I hadn't invested that $25,000, it would have cost me probably, I mean, over $12 million, I reckon it would have cost me at least if I hadn't invested that. Easily, like the relationships that I built, like I've got to work with Amy Porterfield, Jenna Kutcher, Anthony O'Neill, all these like biggest names in the industry. It came out of that decision of investing in myself. And so I guess I'm sharing this because I want people to realize the power of, like, when you know it's right and you lean into it, the how works itself out, and you get resourceful and you just show up. And if you have that energy as well in your speaking, in your stories, like that resourcefulness in your stories, that sense of when you're up against the wall, you can step up and step into courage. If you impart that message and people feel that, they will get more resourceful to step into the room. And so that's something to consider as well in your messaging, your stories, having that as part of your communication.
It's so good.
Mm.
I love everybody's just like, I said, you're going to love this conversation with Colin, but it's like our faces are melting off just because when you remind, and you're doing it now, obviously you do it when you speak, but you're speaking now and you're teaching also the same message. But what you're really doing is you're reminding every person of their capacity to rise,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
Like that's really what's here. And
Yeah.
it's like going when you get like a deep tissue massage and then they sometimes stretch you and it's like, it hurts, but in a good way, right? It hurts good. It's just like, oh, right. This is my capacity, right? And so every word you say is like a reminder of like, no, this is your capacity. This is your invitation. Play from this space. And all of a sudden, all the stories and all the cobwebs and all the confusion and all the blocks just sort of fall away because you remember what's really available to you, which is so deeply powerful. And I agree with you. There have been so many investments that I've made, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to go on a silent meditation retreat for a week and spend 10 grand. Like, what the heck? To be silent? They're not even going to give, what are they going to are they gonna give me mucilix? Like, what is this? And I come home and I'm like, oh my God. I'm like such a, I'm so sparkly and like, it's unbelievable. I can like move time and bend the quantum reality just from like, it's amazing. So yes, I highly get on board with, what that looks like when you just, what your wife said to you, when you just know this is the next thing, it doesn't matter. You're just like, let's go. Right. And then that becomes the catalyst for so much. So many parts of this are so good. My question to you is, there are people who look at this and say, well, it's easy for Colin to do that because he's so charming. He's so good at this. He's so refined. He's so at ease. He's so calm, right? But they might think about themselves, he doesn't know me. I'm insecure. I'm nervous. I get clammy hands. I'm not able to do this. Like, I don't feel this sense of knowing in my worthiness or in my resonance. So how on earth am I going to communicate that? Right. So why don't you speak to that? Because I'm sure you've coached people who come to you with that.
Yeah, and it's hard sometimes to see, like if you see me now, you see you now, you don't know the journey you've been on. But I remember sitting in classroom reading a passage from, it was actually from the Bible. I was in scripture class reading a passage, and my entire I going into funnel vision where I couldn't see the words on the page, physically shaking so much while I'm in class and not being able to finish the paragraph and feeling like there must be something wrong with me because I can't read. I must be an idiot. And I remember for like over a decade, I just thought I was a complete idiot. I would stand in front of audiences when I would do announcements at like youth group or do little presentations at school. My hand would shake so much if I was holding a microphone, I would have to grab it with the other hand to not basically throw it on the audience. Um, like for me, teaching speaking was the last thing I wanted to do. And
Wow.
so I want everyone to realize that if you feel fear, you feel that resistance within yourself, all it is just a an invitation for you to create more courage and greatness and healing within yourself. And I've always found this, the fear is usually the way. Like when you feel that fear, it's usually the door to freedom. And so, for all of us, if you feel like your stories aren't good enough, you're not a good enough communicator, all of that sort of stuff, part of it is that's normal because us as human beings, we all have this need to be loved. We all have a fear of being judged. We all, unless you're a sociopath. So if you have a fear of being judged, congratulations, you're not a sociopath, right? You're a good human being. And so we all have a fear of being judged. It's normal. And so just like normalize it. Just say, okay, this is normal. It's normal to feel. Everyone say that for me right now. Just say I'm normal. Everyone say I'm normal. Now
Normal.
you're not, maybe not that normal, but you no you are. Um, but we're we're all normal, right? It's normal to have these fears, to have these overwhelms, all that sort of stuff. And all of us have had trauma and challenges that we've gone through. But that just makes our message more powerful. And I love what you're bringing up before of think about those times when you rose, those times when you felt called to rise and you rose. They are such great moments to tell. They don't have to be moments of where you climbed a mountain, but they could be just moments of where you rose internally. They are they're the power moments that you can tell and they create revenue, by the way. Those moments create revenue because when you tell them it causes their everyone in your audience is looking for encouragement to rise. They're all looking for that. They're silently, desperately asking to be led. Your audience that everyone here speaks to by you, not by Cathy. They're being asked to lead by you. And when you lead them, you can lead them only like how you can lead them. And so when you tell those stories, it gives people permission to rise, and then it attracts money, it attracts wealth. Because and remember, money is just currency of commitment. Because when you impart commitment in your story, money is the currency of commitment. It's one of the currencies. So they go, I'm ready to go forward, and then their life gets better because their commitment rises.
It's a similar, it's beautiful, it's beautiful. So good. This is a similar question, but it's like adjacent to that, which is what if the question is not necessarily in the capacity to get the words out, but it's more
Mm.
that they doubt the value in what they're selling, right? Like even if their best friend or three clients have said, no, it's great, you're really good at this, there's this feeling of being a fraud or like
Mm.
there's 10 people who are better at doing this than me and you should go buy it from someone else. And so that prevents them from really getting on board. So then they give the presentation well, then they make the offer and they're like, or don't, you don't need to. I mean, you could go do it with,
Yeah.
like that kind of feeling comes
Yeah.
through.
I know for me, I read my testimonials often. I don't know if it's good egotistically or not, but I've got folder where I just have all the testimonials. Like I take screenshots of every testimonial and I will read them before I do a presentation where I'm going to make an offer. And I read them regularly. I talk to my clients. I
Wow.
jump in rooms with them and just hear their stories. And that for me encourages me. And one frame as well is that you're not going to be for everyone. I'm not for everyone. Cathy's not for everyone. You're not for everyone. And so don't even worry about whether someone does it better than you. Just think about if they resonate with you and you know that you've got a process that has helped you and has helped some people, then allow them to enter that space and do the work. And rather than judging yourself or judging them of whether it's good enough or not, just allow them to come in and enter that space and realize that if they resonate with you, they resonate with you. If they resonate with someone else, they resonate with someone else, and that's okay. You don't have to sell everyone. Sometimes people get into this mind of like, I just need to have, like, if I could just sell like a lot of people. It's not about selling everyone. It's about attracting the right people into it. And then when you do that, that's when transformations occur.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
You have a podcast. You also have your Sell with Story guide. Um, Before we tell people where they can find you, what's one of the biggest things that maybe we didn't cover that people come to you that you find that you're helping people overcome? Like what's one other piece that you feel like you want to make sure that we cover that you see that gets in people's way, or it's a common pitfall and you want to help
Mm.
them overcome it?
Oh wow, there's so many. I think for me, I mean, one area of expertise is just content delivery and like building the presentation. What do you put in a presentation so that it doesn't overwhelm the audience, but it really it serves them? And so that's a lot of what we've covered today. And so a lot of the time people put too many tactical things in their presentations when they want to make an offer, and it just overwhelms people. And so what we've covered today of storytelling and metaphors and big ideas, that's what really needs to be in your presentations, because what the purpose of a presentation that converts, that moves people into your programs, is not to give everyone the how to, it's to raise their commitment levels to their goal, because their commitment level is a lot lower than they realize. Raise their commitment levels to their goal so that when they make their decision, they've got enough fuel to drive the how to that you give them, because at the moment they don't have enough fuel. And so tell the stories, tell the metaphors, tell the big ideas, share the case studies, those journeys. And that's the fuel that will increase the commitment to make a decision to drive the how to in the back end. And so don't feel like you need to overwhelm your audience with all the how to, because that will just actually hamstring their progress in the long term.
Wow, that's really
Mm.
powerful. That's
Yeah.
really, really powerful. I think that oftentimes people don't recognize that they're overperforming, right? They're over functioning and I just had a conversation with my daughter's guidance
Mm.
counselor because my daughter's like, there's so much science content. And the teacher and the guidance counselor said, I know, I've been trying to tell the teachers, teach them less and get them to master
Mm.
less because you're overloading them with content and then they can't learn anything.
Yeah.
We just had that conversation this morning. So how much of the presentation do you think should be focused on you speaking about these stories, and how much should be focused on teaching them a little tactic, and how much should be focused on the sale?
If you're doing a 60-minute presentation, the offer itself is usually about 10 to 15 minutes. The content itself will usually 30 to 35 minutes. But I would say of that 35 minutes, you may only do 2 minutes of tactical stuff. And if you do it, if you have really good ideas
Right.
and really good concepts, not like just generic stuff, but ideas that when you share it, someone goes, oh my gosh, like I've never seen it like this. That is value in itself. Everyone thinks that value is how to, but how to is not valuable until you've got the commitment sorted. And most people don't, they think they're more committed than they actually are. And so we need to raise the commitment level. So it's actually very small. And if you can give it, just pepper a little bit of how to in there, a little bit, it'll be enough for people to go, wow, I got some things and I don't have too many things to do, but I'm feeling like I'm ready to take this next step. And so they don't walk away with a list of 25 action items. They walk away with one action item, which is, am I fully committed to this or am I not? And if I am committed, then am I going to do it with you or am I going to still just try to do it by myself? And that's kind of the decision they get to make.
Okay, one last
Yeah.
question before I ask you the very last question, which is can they find you? My last question is, if you're just starting out and you feel
Yeah.
like there's only going to be 10 people at your presentation, whether you're doing a webinar or you're hosting a live challenge or you're live on Instagram or you're in your, dining room, what is that first step to even get the first 20 people there? The first
Mm.
137? Like,
Mm.
what is the first thing that they should be thinking about to get the first presentation to even happen?
Well, first of all, it is deciding that you're going to show up for the 10 like you're showing up for 1,000 people. Because I watch people, and when I'm coaching people, I can tell even when they just start out, I'm like, okay, they're going to be in front of thousands of people very quickly. And they could start out with a small audience, but how they show up, they show up energetically like as if they're showing up for 1,000 people. And you will just naturally, first of all, you just naturally start to create that in your life when you decide to commit to
Yeah.
that at another level. I mean, tactically wise, there's obviously a lot of strategies you can use to get more people signed up. But I just think don't despise those small beginnings. For me, when I first started, just doing one-on-one sessions was great. When I first started doing presentations, I've spoken many times where there were 5 or 6 people in the room, but there was one person in that room that opened up the biggest door for me. And so don't despise those small rooms. Serve them like as if you're serving 1,000 people, and you'll soon have 1,000. It's an energetic showing up. It's like sometimes people say, "Oh, I just need like 200,000 people on my database, and then my business is going to grow up." But it's like you haven't gone through the journey to have the capacity to hold 200,000 people on your email list where you press send and you can energetically hold that. The reason you don't have that is because energetically you're not holding that yet. And so that is the journey of showing up at a greater level of commitment, a greater level of courage. And when you do that, you start attracting those more opportunities into your life anyway.
That is so clear. Like, did you guys feel
Mm.
that? Like, you energetically holding for that amount? It's like, start with really putting the energy out and showing that that energy lives in you, that amount of courage, that capacity. I lied. I'm not gonna, my follow-up question to that is, because we both know when people show up for that workshop, that is showtime.
Yeah.
But sometimes getting them to actually show up, even though they said they would, is hard, or getting them to stick around till you get to your offer. So I'm just curious about the showing up and the keeping them there, because people will say to me, well, I went through all of this. 38 people said they were going to be there and 4 of them showed up and then 3 were there at the end, right? So
Mm.
what is the way to get the buy-in so that they're there for this beautiful presentation that you're going to be
Mm.
sharing?
Well, I mean, to get people to show up, there's a few levers you can use. One is scarcity. So if you just say it's live only, there's zero replay. And that's sometimes great to do because then you're going to get your show up rate probably triple what it would be if you're saying
Wow.
there's replays. Now, you will get feedback from people saying, "Oh, I can't make the time. This is horrible," all that sort of stuff. But in the end, you're gonna get a better result. Usually, when you got a smaller audience, if you just say it's live only, and we have these things called conversion events. It's a strategy we use, and they're live only events. They're like 2 hours, and I just train for 2 hours. There's no replay, and people get up at all hours of the morning and the night and show up. They love it. It's all interactive, and so that's a massive one. Is that scarcity?
Wow.
Another one is just reframing resistances in your emails or your texts, going like, "Hey, I know you've probably got busy. You've probably already got busy. You may have even had something book over it. I get it. But people in life have success when they prioritize what's important. So if this is important, make this a priority. If it's not important, don't show up. If it is important,
Mhm.
show up. You're always going to be busy. There's never going to be a good time. So if this is a priority, let's prioritize it. Like reframing some of the resistances as well that come up for people, giving them an incentive to actually show up, whether it's like a cool show up bonus or some sort of like PDF or downloadable content. and just, just making it easy for people that they've got a link, it's clear, it's easy to show up. I mean, some of those elements will happen. In terms of show up, you're always going to have, you're not going to have 100% show up. And so, but just depending on some of those elements that you put in, they will show up. But if you do the presentation right, you should have most people staying till the end. If you're telling the right stories, the right engagement, the right questions, there should be 90% of the people hearing the offer at least at the end. So I usually find my students don't have an issue with people staying till the end. The show up can be a challenge, but there's different levers that you can pull with that. Yeah.
Type of one, if you want to work with Colin now, you're just like, whatever. I want to know. I'm like, I want to know everything that you do. I don't even know, so I can't tell you, but I do want you to tell us where we can follow along and find you. I know that my team sent us a link, cathyheller.com/Colin. They just put in the chat. Where does that leave us? What's next? How do we get in
Yeah.
on everything?
Yeah, amazing. Well, I appreciate you guys, and appreciate for those people who are already in my programs or part of my world. So first of all, I've got a podcast, Expert Edge Podcast, and I do weekly content there, interviews with people. You're on the podcast. I interview market leaders in the expert industry on that. So definitely check that out, Expert Edge Podcast. And I think the simplest way to start is you've just put a link in there, and it's all about the conversion story. And so we've unpacked some of the ideas around the conversion story. That is a short training. The goal of the conversion story formula is for you to design, find, and create, and maybe even share your conversion story in the next 48 hours. So it's a short mini course. It's the price of a few California tacos, and it will help you to find, create, and share your conversion story in the next 48 hours. It's transformed so many people's lives, and we've gone into a lot of the content today, but that's like the actual worksheets and the questions and everything to kind of go through. So that's a great place to start. Conversion story formula. I think that we have another program, Sell from Stage Academy, which teaches presentations that sell, but that's a great place to start. Yeah.
I'm in. I love you. You're so easy to love. You're lovable, magnetic, funny, smart, sweet, so caring, such a cool human. And there's so much value. Like you just gave us so much value in so many different ways. I mean, there was so much psychology that you just shared. And there was such an invitation for all of us, I feel energetically in everything you shared, that everybody just feels taller, and feels like we're like stepping in a much bigger, bolder way to our assignment. So it's just really powerful. Thank you so much for coming in. And I appreciate everybody who is here and your comments. And if you look, Colin, everybody's really appreciating you. Jen, do you have any thoughts or things you need to share with everybody before we wrap up? I don't like to close a call if I think that you're needing to say something or put people in breakout rooms, or if there's something I didn't know.
Nope. There's nothing. Well, I'm like streaky here. Nope, nothing in addition. Just thank you, Colin, for being willing to be here with our members and do this live podcast interview. We love this. It's so special that you said yes to this and allowed us to all be here for this and to receive this information from you live. There's just nothing like that live transmission like we were just talking about. So thank you for being here.
That's good. I will say, if people are just listening to the audio version, did you want to say the URL so that they have it?
Sure. It's cathyheller.com/Colin. And we'll also.
And that's Colin with one L, Colin, because a lot of people spell it with two. When I was in America for the last 10 years, everyone spelt it with two L's, and no one could understand my name. I'd say Colin, Colin, and they were like, I would Cullom. I'm like, Colum, what is this word? So hopefully you get it right.
That's so fun. My husband's name is Lowell, like Lowell, Massachusetts, Lowell, which is, it's not an easy name if you want to blend in a party. So half the time, if I take him to a work event and we run into someone later on, they call him Joel or Noel or Lyle. So there are people in our life, I won't say who they are, we've never corrected them. Okay. So like they'll send us bar mitzvah invitations and address it to Joel, and he doesn't say, well, I'm good, I'm great, how's business, fine, how are the kids? Never corrects them, because it's now 10 years old, 20 years old. It's hilarious.
That's the best.
One person, this is the best one, thinks his name is Lord. Okay. He was Adam Hardy and he's like, what's your name? Lowell. He's like, how's the Lord? I'm like, why would his name be Lord? Why would that be his name? So I get you. And so when we go to Starbucks, I say, do not say your name. So his middle name is Ben. So I'm like, you're just going to be Ben because I can't take it anymore.
Yeah.
So it's
Lord
hilarious.
Lowell. I like that. Lord Lowell from Jen.
It's hilarious. You guys are the best. I had so much fun with you, Colin. I could literally sit with you every single day and I would never get enough. Thank you for waking up so early. Thank you for being such a sparkly, special, amazingly brilliant person. And thank you everybody for receiving it. And I do hope you go do it. I'm going to go do it. I want to like geek out on it. So let's just let's take this and actually use it, right? I think everyone's inspired. Let's actually go use this inspiration. And thank you so much.
I love that. And if you share your conversion story, tag me on Instagram or tag Cathy on Instagram. I'd love to see it. If you end up doing a live and posting it, like tag me at Colin Boyd, tag Cathy Heller. Yeah, just like let us know.
I love that. Thank you guys.
Thanks, guys.
Okay.
Bless
Bye.
you.
Bye. Bye.